What's up, all Power Ass crew? Today we're looking at a 2011 JKU. We're doing brakes, front brakes to be exact. Let's hit it. Of course, it's going to vary between what set of wheels you have. With these right here, you're going to have to take a 5mm, take that center cap off to get to the lug nuts. But first things first, we're going to get it jacked up, get it on a jack stand, and get her done. And once you get the lug nuts off, you can take the cobwebs out of it. If you have that accessory, that option, yeah, sure. All right. So what we're doing today, putting new discs, calipers, and soft line. One thing I want to point out to people, whatever you're doing, if you're going down the road, this rig right here had a problem pulling a hard left every time you hit the brakes. Then turn loose the brakes, it still wanted to pull left. Come to find out, that caliper over there was sticking. I already got it changed out because I had to change that out to get to my house. So we're doing the passenger side now. People, listen. Whenever you get a situation to where your car's pulling right, left, whatever, and you find out you got a caliper that's sticking and it doesn't want to release and it's holding onto the disc, people want to instantly blame the caliper, and which in most cases that's true. But what you want to do is change that soft line to, seriously, because what happens is oftentimes these soft lines inside here, they get weak, they get old, they start breaking down the inside. So inside the soft line, they start breaking down. The rubber will start acting like a valve inside there. So you push your brake pedal, it forces the fluid this way into the caliper squeezes the disc to make you stop. But now you release the brake, what's supposed to happen is your brake fluid is supposed to go back into the hose this way and back to your master cylinder. Whenever the inside of these soft lines start breaking down, they kind of get little flaps of rubber dropping inside of them. They act like a check valve. And it makes that fluid really, really difficult to get back to the master cylinder, so therefore it can simulate a caliper locking up. So change your caliper, you got to change that soft line. You change that soft line, change the caliper. Do it all at one time, save yourself some headache. Well, let's get on with it. So first things first, we're taking off the caliper and the bracket. So we're going to take right here, 1/2 inch or 13mm. Takes this here, and where's that? This one right here. And once you get those out, which you'll see here in a minute, we'll take a screwdriver, wedge right here. They'll wedge this off, take it off. After all that cranking, the bolt's only that long, so take that one out. Then we got this one right here, it's already out. And take your screwdriver right into the top of right here between the bracket and the caliper. Wedge back on it. Then you take your blade, your screwdriver, get against the disc, bump it. And if you don't have a camera in your hand, you can use one hand to catch it. And there you go. Now, if you're just going to do a disc, a set of pads, you're going to take your caliper and just set it up here out of the way for right now. If that's what you are going to be doing. If you just change the pads out. Because now we can just take our pads, work them out like this, work it out this way, and boom, they slide right out. But we're doing everything at once, so new pads, new rotors, and everything. So come back here on this one. It's a lot easier when you ain't holding the camera. Okay, so now I'm going to start from right here. I'm going to break this line loose right here. This is the line going up to your analog brake system or your master cylinder in some cases. You want to be super, super careful and use the proper wrench when you take this loose. Don't use a crescent wrench, because if you strip this out, you got a headache on your hands. Now from here you got two options. You can go ahead and break it loose right here on the banjo bolt and take your brake line loose from the caliper and get it out of the way, because we're replacing caliper, brake lines, and everything. Or what I'll probably end up doing, because it's what I did on the driver's side, is go ahead and break this loose, leaving this bracket tight. See right here what's bolted to the frame? Leave that tight, that's going to work to your advantage. That'll allow you to break this loose, and as I come through here, disconnect the sensors from back here, because you see it's just a little clip right there that pushes that off. And right here is another little clip. You take a screwdriver, wedge in between this right here, which releases that clip. I'll show you easier on this one right here. Like on this little clip right here, just get your screwdriver behind there and give it a little snug, little tab, and it pops right off there. And this is your analog brake sensor right here. And it goes back up in here, and we got another clip right there. And it don't take much, just simply a little twist and they'll pop right loose. So they get your analog brake sensor loose. And this right here is a 10mm here, and this is also a 10mm, but like I said, I'm gonna break this loose first and get that off. Now what I mean by using the right wrench, this is what you call a line wrench. So you just got this, it's like a box end wrench, but it's just got that gap right there that goes over top of your brake line, and it grabs hold of more sides of the nut right here. Because oftentimes these fittings right here, they're not made out of the most sturdiest metal. So you gotta lock it over like that, and you gotta hold this in place. That's the reason you want this bolt to stay in place. Now depending how cantankerous this fitting's gonna be, it's either going to break loose really easy, or we may invent a new language. We'll find out here in a moment. So I'm going to break this thing loose and see what we get. So I got to break loose, but a little trick for you guys. Ball peen hammer. Let me get this wrench out of the way here. Take and tap on this right here. You don't have to beat hard. We're talking like, you know, you hear like it right there, because oftentimes when it seizes up inside there, you hit it, it'll shock all that stuff loose. Then you take, this is a 12mm line wrench, and I'll put a link down below for these tools right here, because you need to have line wrenches to do this, to do it right. You ever try to put a wrench on looking through a viewfinder? It don't work. There we go. Then once I got the wrench like that, ball peen hammer, and don't have to hit it hard, just tap, 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 tap. Again, that shocks the threads inside here, makes it all break loose a little easier. And now see, now our next caveat is going to be, is this line going to stick to the inside of that fitting right there? Because I've seen that happen many times, so we're about to find out. So I'm going to take it on out, see what happens, so let you know. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys what's going on here. If I take my wrench, put it on there, the driver's side went just as smooth as it can be. The passenger side, watch that line really close. The hard line here, the steel line, is sticking to the nut. So what's happening, if I keep twisting the nut, it's going to twist this line right here in two. That's a bad thing. You don't want to do that. So what option does that leave me? I have it broken loose from the fitting here, from your flex line. It's broken loose. We're good with that. So here's my option. I'm going to take it loose from the caliper here, the banjo bolt, and all the way around through here. Therefore my line will hang, it will drop down. I should be able at that point take this 10mm right here and unscrew the flex line from this right here, and hopefully I'm going to keep working with this and break this loose from that line, because you need this right here to turn. There is one other option once to reinstall it, but I'm not going to bring that option up until I see I have to do it. So I'll show you guys here in just a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and take off this soft line, and I'll be back with you in a minute. 15mm, take off the banjo bolt. Why do they call it a banjo bolt? Because it don't play no music. So now we need to take this bolt right here out, because it holds the flex line to the spring bucket right here. That's a 10mm, and for here in a moment, that'll be a 10mm. So take that one out first. But there's a trick to getting that bracket out of there. I'll show you in just a moment. So once you get that 10mm out, what the trick is, you got to pull this out of there. But we know what the problem is. It won't come out further enough. And once you do it on the driver's side, when it came out further enough, but then it would hit the shock. That is just a problem. Good job, Chrysler engineers. So what do? Well, you get a little bit of redneck on it. Get your flat screwdriver, get it behind that bracket right there, and push. It bends that tab in, and need a little bit more. Get over and get it. Bend that tab in a little bit more. Keep bending apparently until you get it out of there. And there she goes. Now we got to feed that up here, feed it that way. And let your line hang down right there. 10mm here. Take that one out. That's going to allow us to take our flex line loose from the steel line here. So as you see, get the 10mm out. Right beside there is the thread insert. The tongue fits beside there, keeps from turning, positions it. But now we can simply take our fitting, our soft line, unscrew it from this right here. Then we're going to try to figure out how to break it loose from the steel line. But that could be a bear on its own. So I didn't get a wrench on that, so I don't booger it up. But you get the point. And here's what I mean by putting a wrench on it, because if I don't put a wrench here, it's going to tweak the hard line. You don't want to mess up your steel line. Put a wrench right there that takes the pressure off this. Then you take your soft line and you just keep turning like this right here. Ba boom, it's off. So now we got to figure out what we're going to do about fixing this little issue. Okay, so here's the deal. Without destroying this steel line, that fitting ain't gonna move. Take your new soft line, get it on here, and start threading it on. Come on. Okay, so we got it started. So we just keep turning it like it's right here. And you'll feel it to boom right there, and that's hard. It don't want to turn. Take your 12mm line wrench, hold that. No pressure on this line. No pressure on this line. Then turn this. And we have pay dirt. So now we'll take our 10mm, put that right back in, and we good. So that's a workaround. Whenever you run into a situation with this right here, will not turn on this, and trust me, this is a 2011. It really surprises me that that happened. Now, some of your old rigs, like the YJs, TJs, CJs, for instance, it doesn't surprise me at all that happening. This thing's an 11. Kind of surprised me it happens, but you don't want a boogerish line up because it will create a leak, and so that's the workaround for that. So we got that worked out. I'm gonna put that 10mm in, then I'll take the soft line, feed it back through, and we'll start putting the caliper. Well, actually, we got to change the brake disc first, but be back with you in a minute. Now, the caliper kit we're working with comes with a new bracket here. So what we got to do is take these right here loose, and take them off actually. That would be a 21mm, and you've got one here, and you got one here. Take them out. Now, this rig is running wheel spacers. They took a 19mm socket to get them out of there. So now that we got the lug nuts off, we're going to take a hammer, tap the top of it right here, which should break this spacer loose and off the rotor. And oftentimes your disc is going to be a little bit stuck to your unit bearing. So what you do is you take your hammer, smack it right there, you'll pop them right loose, and it is off. So yep, time to put the new rotor on. Now while you're in here, you got your unit bearing right here, which bolts in right there. It comes all the way through here, and this is one sealed bearing right here for those of you who don't know. Grab hold of it. No, you see it's moving. That's normal, because what that is, this is your stub shaft here. Stub shaft goes back to your U-joint here. U-joint goes to your axle shaft, which goes back inside the differential, back over to the pumpkin. And so what you do is you check your unit bearing, you pull it up and down, like right here. Only movement your unit bearing should have is this right here. That is normal. Any up and down or side to side or anything like that is not normal. So check that out. Get your screwdriver, get inside here with your U-joint, pry on it this way a little bit. What you're going to do is take one hand, hold the unit bearing, prevent the stub shaft from turning. Pry on your U-joint right here a little bit. Don't go too deep, because you got a little seal right down inside there, right on the cross. You don't want to dig into that seal. You just want to grab just enough of it to move it up and down, see if your U-joint's moving or anything like that. So whenever you're doing brakes, do a little bit of preventive maintenance or PM work to be sure everything's solid as you guide it apart. And if by chance, whenever you're checking the unit bearing and the U-joint, you find something that's loose, I'm not going to do a demonstration on this rig right here, because I've already got videos to cover that. So I'll link up down below in the description, maybe a little pop-up card up here somewheres about how to change out the unit bearing. It's on a TJ is the one I do the bearing on. I think I've done a YJ video as well. But the thing with it is, it doesn't matter if you got the Dana 30 front end or the Dana 44 front end, that assembly is still the same. So I've got U-joint videos for the axles and the unit bearing, so I'll tag them down in the description so you guys kind of scroll down, click if you need to see it, you know, all that fun stuff. Quit gabbing, let's get on with this. Now before you put your new brake disc on, make sure you take some brake cleaner, spray it down real good, get all the oil residue off of it, because during shipping, during storage and stuff like that, they put a film on it to protect it, keep from it rusting. So be sure you get that good and cleaned up. The other thing you need to do, on your unit bearing, if you look real close, a lot of people think that the inside of the brake rotor sits flat against the whole thing, when in fact it doesn't. If you look real close, you got a ridge here and a high spot here. We got a high spot here and a high spot here with a recessed area where the lug nuts are. So your brake disc actually rides right on this lip and right on this lip. So what you want to do is take your razor blade, go around all that to be sure you got no kind of residue, no kind of rust, crust, or junk sitting on top of it. Therefore your rotor sits as flat as it possibly can onto your unit bearing. So get your blade, go around, scratch it all real good, wire brush, whatever you feel you fancy. Just make sure it's clean. Now here's another thing you want to do. After you get that thing good and cleaned up, get you a little bit of anti-seize, and you don't coat the whole face. Just take it right into this radius right here, because more times than not, whenever your brake disc is getting stuck, more times than not, it's right down inside this radius that hangs it up. So just take just a very, very thin film of your anti-seize and get right down inside here, just super, super light. So therefore, next time you go to do your brake disc, especially if you go out playing a lot, wheeling, whatever, and you get into a bunch of water, then the rust and crust and crap will build up between your unit bearing and your disc, and then make it hard to come off when you go to service it later. So just put a really super light film right inside here, and that'll help that disc come off next time you go to service your brakes or unit bearing or whatever it is you're going to work on. You know what I mean. Now, those of you out there who are running wheel spacers, there are some very important things you need to keep tabs of. Obviously, your mating surface here, razor blade again, make sure that is as flat and as clean as you possibly can, no debris or anything, because it's sitting against your disc here. And what we'll do, we'll take our lug nuts, which are over here, right there, and they'll go back in there and tighten them up. So you want to be sure your seats down inside here, there's no junk inside there to impede proper fitting of your lug nuts. Right inside here, you want to be sure all that's good and clean, because that rides right over top your lip of your unit bearing, your hub here. So make sure everything is really good and clean before you go to put it together. Wayne just pulled in, he's over jamming again. Now the lug nuts for your wheel spacers, again, of course I stick these off, they're good and clean, but just be sure you got no debris on them. And that's the same even with the lug nuts that you put your wheels on. Just cleanliness, you got to make sure you're good. Blue Loctite, a tiny little drop is all you need. Don't need a lot. Then you torque them down, 100 foot-pounds. Yes, people, seriously, 100 foot-pounds, torque them, okay? Don't we just be half, I ain't gonna say that. Looky right there, that's all it takes. You don't need a lot, okay? Torque them down, 100 foot-pounds. So as I told you guys a little while ago, this kit right here actually comes with a new bracket right here. So what you want to do is get you a 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter. You need to take these right here out. Put them down over here where I'll probably forget where I laid them. Take your caliper, set it back out of the way. Then we're going to take this, and it goes like this. Goes over top of this. It goes in right there, lines up with those holes right there that we took out just a little while ago. Now before you put your brake shoes on, get your little chatter clips, put them in right along in here. Now there's a right and wrong way to put these in. Notice the little hook right here. You always want these on the outside. Why? Because honestly, you ain't got enough room between the rotor and the bracket to cram it in there. So, little hook here, drop it, lose it. Like a 10 millimeter socket, I might find it. There it is. Hook it on the back side. I'm trying to give you guys a good camera shot and me do this at the same time. Then once you get that backside hook pushed, it's in place. Alright, let's get our brake pads in place. Now when you put your brake pads in, your chatter spring, your little squealer that says, hey, you need to change your brakes, it goes on the inside. And these things can be rather fun to put in, so whenever you put your tab in, push downward as hard as you can to push that spring in, the chatter spring. Then you may have to finesse it with the screwdriver a little bit to get the wedge into here, but they'll go. You just kind of hold your mouth just right and maybe invent some more language or something, but it'll go. So now, put the caliper on. Now there's one thing I want to point out to you guys before we start tying the brake line on. Here's the deal. Put your caliper on, you think, oh my gosh, it's perfect. Then all of a sudden you discover, hey, I can't bleed my brakes. No matter how much I bleed, it's wrong. There's a right and wrong way to put a caliper on. And oftentimes, physically mounting, they will swap from left to right, driver's side, passenger side, whatever. But there's one little thing that tells you that you've got it on the right way. Right there. The bleeder screw has to be on top. Why? This thing gets full of brake fluid, doesn't it? And you got to get the bubbles out. Bubbles go up. Bubbles go up and out the bleeder screw. So, if you happen to mount it backwards, if this bleeder is on bottom, guess what you're not going to do? You're not going to bleed your brakes properly. So make sure that is on top. So it's very easily done. I've seen several vehicles that physically bolted from one side to another. They'll bolt, but make sure your bleed screw's on top. Then you know you got it right. So now it's time for the new brake line. Tied it together. Okay, one thing, whenever you get your brake line tightened back up, sometimes it happens. Look where my brake line's at. It's hitting right there on the shock tower. That's a major no. Why? Because vibrations going down the road is going to wear a hole in your line. Guess what you have then? No brakes. So what you're going to do is get you like the back end of a screwdriver handle or something like that, wedge in between right here, flex it outward just a little bit, it'll get it off that shock tower. So whenever you're putting your lines on these Jeeps, especially whether you run them, pay attention to that, because that's one of those things that happens. It's really easy to miss. So get that line up off that shock tower. Now the rest of your flex line, come in from behind the shock absorber here, bring it on through. Come on, Dan, come on through. Now your bracket here, notice you've got a slot right there. Notice this tab right there. Do you see where I'm going with this? Yeah, I'm sure you do. That tab goes in the slot, that goes back like that, and there it is. You can put your bolt in right there and you're good to go. Okay, we tighten that 10mm up. You see you got plenty of room between your shock. We'll take care of our speed sensor here in a moment because we need to make sure we tie our banjo bolt in. I said that earlier about a banjo bolt. Guess what? I could show you guys what a banjo bolt does. Take it out of there. So pay attention to those washers right there. You do not want to lose them. And also, oftentimes your brake line comes with new washers too. So if you got too many, we're good. You only need two, one on each side of your brake line here. So let me show you what a banjo bolt does. Whenever you take and you push on your brakes, okay, you've got a hole right there. See that hole? Brake fluid comes through that hole because it's dripping out of it right now. But whenever you push on your brakes, it pushes fluid through that hole right there. Well, this bolt is hollow. So the fluid goes in there, comes out that hole right there, forces it in the hole inside your caliper or wheel cylinder, whatever you may have. In this case, be a caliper. That is what transfers the fluid from the line through the bolt into the caliper. I would say it's magic, but it's not. But you know how it goes. All right, now washers, very, very important. I'm gonna do this one at a time here. Put washer here. They're soft copper, and I typically say they're single use. I can do this, I can do this. I like entertaining myself, thank you. Wayne's over laughing at me because he's trying to help me and I'm being complicated. So now, you feed that through there, that goes through there, then you take your other one, it goes on the other side, like that. And this, notice your brake line comes up on top of the caliper like that. And now I've actually, well, you got the point, and I'm going to screw that in, but I got to turn this loose and hold that line, so there you go. So now we got a speed sensor all lined up here. You get your little clips, pop them along that brake line that holds them in place right here, right there, and there's one right back here as well. That keeps your speed sensor from rubbing against anything and chafing the wires and stuff, so you got to keep an eye on that. So at this point, we can actually start bleeding brakes. First thing we got to do, make sure you got fluid in the master cylinder. Now before you even get started, check your master cylinder, see how much fluid you got in it. And we've got some .4. I know a lot of people say use .3, but I prefer .4 simply because, why? 475 degree high temp, because if you come down a long mountain or something like that, like we're in Tennessee. And not far from here we got, what's that, Mount Eagle. Mount Eagle. Yeah, we got Mount Eagle Mountain, and you could have to ride your brakes a little bit. That kind of heats up your brakes. That will, in some cases, on some brake systems, it can boil your brake system over. So, right there, you want to get the .4. It's the good stuff. Top off your master cylinder.
You'll make me spill it now. You're watching.
Can you do it? Can you do it? Like Fryburger can't pour it in the valve cover without spilling it. Yeah, he does it. Get my wrench ready to bleed the brakes. He's gonna be the pedal pusher and I'm gonna be cranking the bleeder screw, and I gotta find the right part first. So I've got me a little catch bucket down below to catch it from hitting the ground, but you know, my driveway's always staying up anyways, but hey, let's try to be proper this time. 11mm, fits the bleeder screw. And we got the passenger, Wayne's gonna be pushing the pedal, and we got the passenger side window open. Get this broken loose, because you just want it. So I got finger tight now, you come in, boom, stops right there. So what we're gonna do is work this back and forth. Okay, right there's tight, snugged. So he's gonna pump up the brakes, pump it up. don't know if you guys can hear the brake booster over whistling. Okay, he's just said holding. He's holding the brake pedal down. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pop this brake bleeder screw loose and back it up. And I'm sure I purged out some air, so I'm going to tighten it back up, because for the first few pedal pushes you may not get any fluid at all. Alright, pump it. Okay, I can feel the caliper starting to move now. Okay, so we're starting to get fluid now, maybe. Oh yeah, I heard bubble pop. Ooh, look at the bubbles. Shoo! Okay, he just said the pedal hit the floor. He said down. So now we'll snug this back up. Not tight, just snug. Pump it. Okay, he said holding it. So what he's doing, he's holding the pedal down. He's not turning loose the pedal. So whenever I break the bleeder screw loose, the brake pedal will drop because you're losing fluid out right here. Okay, he said the pedal is down, which means his pedal has stopped. So now we snug this back up. Why do we do that? Because whenever he releases the pedal, if you've got this loose, it's going to suck air back inside the master cylinder. So you don't want it tight, you just want it snug enough that prevents from sucking air back inside the caliper, that's what I meant to say. Alright, pump it up.
Getting good pedal.
He says getting really good pedal.
Hold it.
He's holding it, so now we're going to break this loose again. When he says hold, we break it loose. Bleed out the... It should be down now. You good?
Check the master cylinder.
Alright, he's checking the master cylinder. What you don't want to do is, like, you go through this whole process bleeding the brakes down and make the mistake of bleeding too much out. Next thing you know, you've drained the master cylinder and you've introduced air to the whole system. So he tops it off. Because about every 3, maybe 4, something like that, depending on how big of a master cylinder you have. Because the bore inside of them, you can have a 3/4 inch bore, 1 inch bore, whatever size you may have. The bigger the bore, the more fluid it moves. Okay, he's pumped it, he's holding it, so break it loose. Okay, it says down, so now I'll take my ratchet, come back the other way. Okay.
Really good pedal.
He said we got really good pedal. Okay, we'll do it a couple more times. So what we're going to see is, normally if you do it with a wrench and you'll be able to see the bubbles come out the end right here, but where I'm doing it with a ratchet, what you'll see is coming from around the edge of the socket here, you'll see the bubbles popping out around that. So he's holding it right now. So break it loose. And if we get bubbles right here at the edge of the socket, you'll see the bubbles come out around that. And I'm not seeing any bubbles. There's a look. Yeah, we had a couple bubbles that time. Okay, he sits on the floor, so we're going to snug it back up. Pump it. He's holding it, and while he's holding it, we'll break it loose. His pedal will drop. See?
Down.
It's down. Get snugged back up. Okay, we still got a couple more bubbles out of it, so again. He's holding it, and the ratchet goes the right way. Pop it loose. Pop it loose. Come on, Daddy. Pop it loose.
Down.
All right. Suck it back in there. Again. This will probably do it.
Really good pedal. Hold it.
Yeah, he says we're having really good pedal. Okay, pop it.
Down.
And he says the pedal's down, lock the ratchet back in, lock the bleeder screw back in, and I think we are good. Now, when you tighten down your bleeder screw, you don't need it crazy tight. Just a good hard snug and call it a day. Don't crank it too tight and break it off in there, because that'll create your own different kind of headaches. So, good hard snug, good to go. Now, some of you may wonder how I get some of these shots, trying to cram the camera back in places. Check out this tripod. It's got the flexible legs on it. It's kind of like a stiff wire inside of it. I just wrapped around the control arm right there, and there's where my bleeder screw was. There's the lens, and actually I've still got the camera running, but yep, that's how I do it. Tie it around that. These tripods are awesome. Now maybe it's me being picky, but whenever I put my lug nuts on, of course we got an impact right here. We're gonna, run them, then torque them properly. One thing I always hate seeing tire shops do, they'll put this on the socket, put it up here, and just boom, run it on with the ratchet. Bad idea. Do not do that. Run them on 3 or 4 threads first. Me being picky as I am, especially with wheels like these, I'll run them all the way into the touch, and at least get a couple of them. I'm taking my foot, moving the wheel back and forth, which centers the cone of the lug nut. Now come over to this one, adjacent from each other. And again, jockey the wheel around until you feel the cone center. And then that has the wheel centered throughout the hub right here. Now the rest of them, you can run them on in no problem. I guess the only reason I really do that is because, these are billet wheels, yes, obviously. But when you're off-centered and you run the lug nut on, the seats are scrubbed. The lug nut versus the wheel, the seats are scrubbed against each other. And I guess it's me being too picky or whatever. I don't feel like you could ever be too picky with stuff like this. But it prevents you from really marring up the seat of the wheel. So center 2 of them adjacent from each other, then you run the rest of them on, then properly torque them. And before you wheel Nazi start blasting me in the comments, I don't run them up top of the impact. I run them up to the point where they make contact and maybe give them a little kiss and a hug or something like that, a little extra bump. Then I come back with the torque wrench and do them properly. I don't ever run them on completely tight with the torque wrench, with the impacts. Why? Because you're not gonna get a proper torque setting that way. Cool? All right, think about it. So that pretty much concludes. So that pretty much, where's my angle at? So that pretty much concludes today's programming. I'll never get. See what y'all put up with?
Here's a pretty sky.
Can't find good help these days. What do you do with them? No, actually, he's helped since what? I was 14, 15 years old or something like that. A long time. We've done a lot of stupid stuff. We have fun with it though. His wife was afraid for us getting out and doing stuff together. It just never ends well. But anyway, so today we have done the front brakes. The other side, it does pretty much the same way. You don't need to film with the other side. Just remember that, if you got wheel spacers, you want to make sure you put your Loctite on, torque them to 100 foot-pounds or 100 pound-feet, whatever. Put the tire back on, again, 100 pound-feet, make sure you torque them properly. Remember that brake line back in behind here, that metal line that gets next to that shock tower, don't let it touch, bad thing. And so, yep, that pretty much concludes for the front brakes. What we're going to be doing to this rig, I'm going to be doing the back brakes next, new shocks all the way around, change the front differential, rear differential, and transfer case fluids. And I'm going to be inspecting the front end for like ball joints and stuff like that. And I definitely need some tie rodding on one side. So there's going to be quite a few videos made off this rig right here. So if this is something you guys want to see, some JKU vids, be sure to subscribe, hit that thumbs up. Appreciate you hanging out. Peace. Later, y'all. Yay. Peace. Later.